Welcome to the eighth history tidbit from the Haynes Sheldon Museum. I am Helen Alton. I'm the director of the museum, and I'm here today to talk about dip nets and hooligan runs, or Eulachon. Locally, it gets pronounced hooligan rather than Eulachon. Here, it's the hooligan season is coming up pretty soon here. It's usually the end of April, beginning of May, first 2 weeks of May, and it's an exciting time. And here is a picture from the 1950s of a Haynes House children scooping hooligan from the Chilkat River. The excitement begins that these small fish come in and they bring with them sea lions and birds and all sorts of life and activity. And it just gets to be a really noisy, exciting time that announces spring in the Chilkat Valley. And everybody in town is asking, have you seen has the hooligan come yet? Are they here yet? Are they in the Chilkoot? Are they in the Chilkat? So I thought it was a good time to talk about this fish. It's a type of anadromous smelt. So by anadromous, what I mean is that it is hatched in freshwater, spends most of its life in salt water, and then comes back to spawn in freshwater again. They are known as hooligan locally. They're also traditionally known as candlefish, and in Tlingit they're known as sak. The candlefish is because when you take a dried hooligan, it has so much oil in it that you can light it and it makes a lantern or a light for you. The hooligan are usually removed from the water. They come in masses of fish, and they're removed with a dip net. And this is a dip net on display in our museum. This is the catalog image of it. And this is a gentleman with a dip net. I don't know who he is, but his dip net's a little bit different, but again, a big net of wood. The nets were usually originally made from sinew strips knotted together, and I've seen some that look like they were nettle. We haven't done a fiber analysis, but it's definitely a fiber rather than string. And nowadays what we see is cotton, and then it's gone into the plastics. The netting is now primarily a plastic of some sort. This is an image of Ben Watson netting hooligan in 1927. And what was traditionally done is you would scoop it up and just dump them into the canoe. Nowadays, there's a bunch of 5-gallon buckets, and you dump them into the 5-gallon buckets and carry them off that way. But traditionally, they would be taken away in a canoe. And here is a gentleman, and this is from the Shot Ridge Archives, and his net is a little light, but he is just scooping them up from the shore. They tend to run along the shores, and so they're easy to get. You can wade in and get them and just scoop them up. They are pretty, they do get a little skittish, and you have to be careful about your shadow, which they'll just go away from you. And some people like to throw a net from a bridge crossing the Chilkoot, because that way their shadow and stuff doesn't get involved. And so they have a big throw net that they put in and then scoop up the fish. And here's in the 50s, a young child going for hooligan. And this is more of a modern net, a metal net frame with a cotton or a synthetic netting. I had to throw this one in. I'm not sure that those are hooligan that they've got on their stick, but I thought this was a pretty cute image of the boys fishing. And they are little fish that they've got. Once your canoe was filled, you would take it to your camp, the Hooligan Camp. This is one at 7 Mile. And the hooligan could be processed in the boat, or it could be processed in a pit or a container. We'll get to the processing. So this is a 1920s image of fish camp, of the Hooligan Fish Camp. It is the earliest of the fish camps, so it's not high summer. It's pretty cold and rainy sometimes, and some of the accounts, some people noted that it wasn't their favorite camp, but it was still fun. And it was a time that people would also gather basket making supplies. But here what they're doing is they're processing the hooligan over a fire. It's getting smoked and dried. Traditionally, the fishing and processing locations were organized by clan affiliation. And this is another image of a fish camp along the Chilkat. And this is from a report by Fish and Game that shows the traditional fish locations for Hooligan. And one of them was at Deschutes, what's now Haines. One of them was at Jones Point across the isthmus. Then Yandastucky, which is about at 4 Mile, it's right where our airport is. And then at 6 Mile, 7 Mile, 9 Mile, and then at Cotwell 2 at 19 Mile, or Cluck 2, it's known as, just up here at 19 Mile, Cluck 1. And then on the other side, the Lutak River has quite a lot of hooligan that go in it. And there was a camp at Lutak Camp just before going in. And then the Chilkoot Village was another spot. And they also used to have a temporary camp at Skagway. And there's hooligan that come in at Skagway. Hooligan actually come in other places around Alaska, other shore rivers. Our runs are very famous, but there are other rivers, and in fact, all along the coast. But the oil content is better the further north you get with the fish. And this is one from May 14th, 1921, and you can see smoke coming out of the chimney here. Usually there was a smokehouse, and it would probably a wood smokehouse. So this is probably for heating, but there would be a smokehouse and then all these tents that people were staying in. You'd stay a couple weeks at your fish camp. The processing, they did a couple processing, and we still do a couple of ways of processing. One of them is to dry it or smoke it, and that keeps it longer, and it's really delicious. And the other way is to render it for the oil. And the oil was a commodity at the time of the gold rush. It was worth more than the gold for the weight. And it was used primarily to distribute and exchange as a trade good. It didn't take a lot of oil. As I said, it was very valuable. You could get quite a lot for the oil. Nowadays, it also gets distributed, but it gets distributed more within clan groups to elders and to family, with first priority to those who helped and then the elders. This is Jerry Strong showing Hooligan on smokehouse racks, and he's starting to basically put all the fish on these twigs and get them ready for smoking. And in the Dictionary of Tlingit by Kari Edwards, who is one of our Haines locals, she has a phrase that is in Tlingit there, and I'm not going to try to say it, but it translates to "those hooligan are strung through the mouth on the stick." And the word hooligan is here sak, way sak. And this is the smokehouse with the fish all strung up and ready to be smoked and dried. You can see there's quite a harvest. The rest of them are rendered into oil. And here Jerry Strong and Lonnie, who is now Hotch, she was Strong at the time, are rendering the oil from the hooligan. And this is in 1979. So they're taking a big batch of the hooligan and putting it in a pit. Now, traditionally, what would be done is you do it in a canoe or a pit. You add water to the canoe with all the fish in it, and then you would add hot stones to get the water hot. You wouldn't boil it. Nowadays, some of the rendering is done where the liquid, you end up boiling the fish. And some people feel like that makes it fishier tasting, and it doesn't taste as good as the oil that's rendered from not quite boiling. The hooligan fish is 15% oil, the body weight, when they spawn. So there's a significant amount of oil that comes out of them. And here Jerry Strong is skimming hooligan oil in 1979 using a small frying pan, small cast iron frying pan. And this is the sak is the noun for hooligan oil. And here you can see some of the oil in the frying pan. So hooligan oil was transported in large bentwood boxes or small bentwood boxes It was a very important trade good. And we've got some terms for the kids: hooligan, candlefish, anadromous, smelt, suck, rendering, skimming, smokehouse, and fish camp. Um, Also, what you can do with the kids is talk to them about trade items and what would they trade to other people, what would they want from other people, and how would you negotiate an exchange of goods. I'd like to say thank you to the Strong family for the images from Fish Camp. And I'd also like to recommend that you go to the Haynes Sheldon Museum website under special events, education and special events. We will have some links to other activities, to a curriculum for kids, and also to a really nice academic paper about hooligan in our region. So for those of you who want more in-depth knowledge, thank you very much for joining me. And I look forward to hearing from you as you go out and catch hooligan this spring.